It's catchy. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Tryon. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the introduction to the 2024 Block of the Month Club. We, of course, are doing the Barn Star Sampler Quilt, and I'm so glad you're here with us. Maybe you've registered for a kit. Maybe you just have the book, or maybe you're just tuning in for the entertainment of it. But tonight is about opening your kit, and or this particular live is about opening your kit, going through the box, and letting you know how it works. The subsequent lives are going to be about the actual making of the blocks, and we are breaking things up like that. So in case you need to go back and watch again, you're not having to fast forward through all kinds of talking and unboxing and things like that, instructions for you to get to the actual making of the blocks. I'll also say that these lives are going to operate a little bit differently than our regular lives. They're going to operate like a class, which means I'm going to answer questions not live in the traditional way where we are, chatting back and forth and kind of getting derailed. No. Because I want you to be able to watch these as you go throughout the month, I'm going to concentrate on just making the quilt block, and I will answer questions afterwards in the comments. Oftentimes people will watch ahead and then they will make and need to watch as they go. And we don't want to be stalled by either answering a lot of questions live or talking to people back and forth. So it will operate, even though it's live, like a regular class. So in this little small live, it's just a little welcome and a hello, and let's get out our kit. You should have received your box by now, and we've given everyone this time an organizational little tote here with the homemade on it. So cute. To keep all of your stuff in. Now, at some point, you're going to outgrow this box, but you could keep your whatever block you're currently working on, all of the stuff in this organizational container, and then move your scraps out as you go and pull them back as you need them. Because sometimes we're going to give you enough in a block where you may need to pull from that fabric later on in other blocks. So don't go using your extra fabric on other things just yet. You wait until your complete quilt is finished before you go grabbing from the stash. There is quite a bit of extra fabric in what we're giving, but it's often needed later. So let's get going with opening this up because I know you're all anxious. So yeah, here we've got our little welcome card as we always do. And if you flip it over, oh, there's me with the book, and your book is here. And you've got the schedule here. And what we're going to be doing is you can tune in live the last Monday of every month. And what's going to happen is you've gotten 2 months worth of blocks here. So if I move the book over, you'll see you've got block 1 and block 2. This is sort of how they're going to arrive going forward in the mail, is 2 blocks at a time. So we're going to do, even though it's the Block of the Month Club, we're actually doing 2 blocks a month. And to make it kind of worse, sorry, some of the months need you to make 2 of the blocks. But it's pretty quick work once you've made one to make a second one, or you can make them at the same time. In the classes, I will be making one of the blocks, even if you need to make it twice. And I will often, because some of the blocks are quite repetitive in the corners. So if we take this first block, for example, this is one we're going to do in our first class. You'll see we've got 4 corner blocks here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. They're all the same. So because it takes sometimes hours and hours to make these and cut them and all of that, I'll be showing you how to make this block, and then you will repeat it. And then of course we'll make the center block. So I won't in the class be making this one and this one and this one and this one. just for time's sake, because once you've made one, you can make all of them. So hopefully that makes sense and kind of keeps us without having, 5 hours for every one video. So that's how it's going to work. And on the last Monday of every month, we're going to start at 7 p.m. Eastern with the first block that we're making that month. Then we're going to take a short break. So the live will end and we'll give everybody, 5-10 minutes to go get a drink, take a little pause, and then we'll come back live and do the second block for that month. And the reason why we're not doing it in one long video, again, is so that you can go back and watch it month or block by block if you're doing it at a later time. So even though it will still air on the first Monday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern, it's going to air in 2 chunks. The first block we're doing that month, then we'll have a little break where we leave the live, and then you'll have to come back on for the second live. And then that will be the second block again, so that you can watch it in your own time and they stay posted. It'll be easier to find. And then every block has its own video, no fast forwarding. So that's our thinking there. Okay, so I've already shown you how you're getting your fabric and your blocks. If you are operating, maybe you just got the book from us, that's okay too. If you're getting the fabric, it's all marked, fabric 6, fabric 10, whatever, and then that's going to make it very easy for you to find the fabric that you need in your block and in the book. So that's how those are going to come. And then in your actual Barn Star Sampler book, we've included this swatch sheet printed out. And at the beginning of each class, now I say this, but I also want you to be careful not to cut into fabric for swatches and then leave yourself short. You can cut a little swatch off of somewhere near the selvage, just sort of a little corner like this. And so that you know this is your number 18. In the book, you'll see that one of the very first pages, there's a legend of all of the different fabrics that you need. Fabric 1, fabric 2, fabric whatever. Goes all the way up to fabric number 28. Yes, 28 different fabrics. So if you can imagine us trying to organize this, okay, big shout out to Amanda and the homemade team for organizing this. She's done a fabulous job. Let's give Amanda a little love. Yay. Okay, so there's 28 different fabrics. She has labeled all of them for us. Bless her heart. And what we've done is given you a fabric that's as close to the one in the little picture here as possible. So what we'll have you do is when you open your block, so if you're opening up this one and you see fabric 6, so fabric 6 here looks, pretty similar. Just take off a little corner and you're going to put that right on number 6. So why don't we do that just as a little example. I'll take off fabric 6. I've got a little piece of it here. And I'm just cutting off a corner and putting it on. And the fabrics don't arrive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like they arrive in all kinds of different orders. So don't sweat it if it's like, wait a minute, I started with fabric 6 or fabric 18. That's fine. Just go with it. Block 1 doesn't mean you're using fabric 1. And I'm just using a little bit of white glue, the tiniest little dot, doesn't take much. And that's going to be my fabric 6. If your fabric 6 doesn't look exactly like that, or if one of your background white fabrics doesn't look exactly like the one I'm using, there is I don't want to say 2 full versions, but in some cases, for example, with the white, we need to send so much of it that some people got one version and other people got another version, but you will be getting the same fabric in your entire kit. Like, it won't interchange too much. Some of the background fabrics call for a different white low volume print. So whatever you've got in your kit is what you're going to be using, and it'll be similar to what I'm using and what others are using, but some of the kits have a slight variation. So don't be worried too much about that. At the end of the day, it's all going to turn out to look very similar to this. It's going to be gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. But it is going to help you a lot to do this swatch sheet as you go. And the reason I know that is because we've made this, and my book is filled with all kinds of notes and question marks and things like that. Because there's a few times where I'm like, oh, what happened here? Or, oh, so I do encourage you to watch the videos because we have worked out a few of the kinks. I've made a few mistakes, more than a few, and I will try to prevent you from making the same. For example, I'm going to say this right now, and I'll say it as we continue. When you look at the cutting instructions for your particular fabric, I always want you to cut the largest size of that fabric first. And the reason is just to make sure that that you don't start with the smallest and then end up with not enough for the largest print because you've cut down, down, down. Meanwhile, you could have gotten the smaller cuts out of that amount of fabric if you would have started with the largest cut first. That's something I think they should have put it in that order where the largest cut came first, but it's not always the case. They sort of tend to do it with the largest number of pieces that you need to cut first. Anyway, I found it helpful to do that. The other thing you need to know going in is that they, in the quilt block instructions, call, cut 16 3x3s, and those are going to be labeled piece A. And it's just saying from white print or from white print number 1. So when you have your swatch sheet, that's going to really help you not have to go and try to find what fabric is what based on this picture. You're going to have like your own cheat sheet for that, and it's going to make a lot more sense going forward. So really do try to fill this out as you go. Some things to have handy for each lesson is I found it most helpful to have my iron and a small ironing pad or the ironing board right nearby where you're working. There's a lot of triangular sewing here where you're going from cutting to pressing, or cutting to sewing to pressing, cutting to sewing to pressing. Because we're making block by block and not assembly lining an entire quilt and putting it together, you're not chain piecing like 100 pieces and then you can bring 100 pieces over to the ironing board. You're really doing like 4 and needing to press and trim right away. So keep that in mind when you're setting yourself up for this. If your ironing station is somewhere else, you may want to have just a little, either a small iron or keep your iron near you with a smaller pad so that you can bring it from the machine back to the iron and try to be maybe working on a cutting surface like right in front of you. That way you can kind of make quicker work out of doing it. The other thing that is really helpful, one of these is also really helpful, especially if you don't have a whole sewing space. One of these pads that has the cutting mat and the ironing pad all together. This is really helpful for that kind of quick work. Press, trim, sew, press, trim, sew. So that's really great. The other thing you can do if it helps you stay organized is even if you wanted to print something off on your computer, or if you've got some little stickers or something like that, is maybe you want to have some little pieces that help you know which piece is piece. So I've just got some little dots here. In retrospect, I should have included those in the kit. I'm really sorry I didn't. I think like we had kind of put the kit together before we had like really dug super deep. And this we found helpful to letter them, but you could just use a little scrap of paper and pin it on. It does not have to be a fancy sticker or anything like that. But that is something I'd include in future kits is little alphabet stickers so that you can kind of keep those pieces organized once they're cut, because you do cut the block obviously ahead, and the instructions call for the cutting one block. And that does get a little bit confusing because we're making the sampler. But in this book, you'll see that there's actually a number of other patterns at the back that use some of these same blocks or variations of these blocks. And so I get why they're showing you how to they're giving you the cutting instructions for how to make one of these blocks. So in block 2, for example, we need to make 2 of these Christmas stars, but these cutting instructions are for making 1. So when we're going to do this, you want to make sure you're cutting out your fabric. Since you're cutting, cut enough for 2. If it calls for 2. And you'll see in the instructions yield pieces needed to make 1 block, and check the instructions for how many you need to make, because we often need more than 1 block. So for the Barn Star, I want to just look and see where it says we need 2 of these. Materials are for making 2 identical blocks. So under the materials section, it says the materials are for making 2 identical blocks needed for the Barn Star Sampler. If you're making a different quilt, refer to the materials for that project. So here, we're giving you the materials to make 2, but the cutting instructions are for only making 1, even though we need to make 2. So that's not super clear in the book. So I'm trying to reiterate that here, and I'll reiterate it when we're making the blocks as we go, that we need to make 2. And so you may as well cut enough for 2 while you're cutting. So while it says we need 16 3x3-inch squares, you know, for this first block, like we've got here, we actually need 32. So that's a much bigger pile. And you'll be annoyed to have to go back and recut it when you're making the second block. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go. And I'm trying to give you a lot of these tips and tricks here in this beginning live, so that when we're doing the actual block, the class is centered on making that block. The other thing to take notice of in the book that comes up is sometimes they use special techniques for making, you know, an elongated half square triangle, or I'm going to just show you an example, like an elongated flying geese unit like this, where the pieces are longer. It's not going to immediately trigger you like, oh yeah, that's a flying geese unit, because it looks a little bit different. Like this one here, it looks a little longer on this end. They'll give you instructions on how to, like if you're very new to quilting, on how to put these blocks together in this special techniques section. So if you don't know how to make a corner unit, for example, like putting, you know, a square on the end of a rectangle, it shows you. If you're not sure how to make flying geese, it shows you. That starts on page 74. If it's saying house unit, for example, with the 2 squares up top, it's showing you how to do that. It does not show you how to do that in each individual block instructions, but it does show you that in the special techniques section. And of course, we're going to be going through that in the video too. Some of these elongated flying geese units, you might not be familiar with how to make those. It's in this section. What to do with your trimmings, for example. So I just wanted to let everyone know that as I've been making this quilt, there is a lot of half square triangle units. And there is a lot of well, it is waste, honestly. There's over 20 yards of fabric in this quilt. And this is why. We've got all of these little extra units that constantly get cut off. And what I'm doing, and you'll see me do it in the classes, is as I go, I'm sewing these together. And I'm just making half square triangles out of all of the scraps as I go. Otherwise, you'll be sitting on 1 billion of these little triangles. And then at the end, we can figure out something cool to make with all of the scraps. But if you sew them as you go, because they get cut off in pairs. And as a triangle, I'm just doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance right down the edge, chain piecing them, and then continuing on with my sewing. If you do this, it will force you to do something with these scraps rather than otherwise these will end up getting thrown out. So that's what I'm doing as we go. And I'll press them as I go into half square triangle units and trim them at some point. But I wanted to give you that heads up for some of the waste. We can use that. And you may as well do it as you go. I've been doing it as I went, and it's pretty fast. And yeah. Couple other tools that might be handy. I'm going to be drawing on the lines for any of our half square triangle or flying geese or corner units. If you have a laser, this would be a perfect project to use the laser because there is tons of drawing on the lines. So yeah, feel free to use your laser if you have one. You can check on our website if you'd like to get a laser once you start drawing on all these lines. Maybe be like, oh, perfect, laser, let's do it. We've got some in stock. And I think that's basically enough to kind of get you going. We're going to start with block 1. And again, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments and I'll go back through each particular class and answer those questions in the comments. But you can also always reach out to us at info@homemade.ca. Yep, there it is. Info@homemade.ca. We're happy to answer any of your questions. And if you are watching this and going like, wait, I didn't know you were doing this. Hey, hang on. I want to be a part of this. It's still, you're not too late. You're too late for the kit because we had a certain amount of fabric that we ordered for this, but we've got some books left. So you could definitely use your own stash and you could follow along in the legend. It kind of just talks about find a, white and raspberry style print, and then you can make your sheet. If you order the book from us, we will include the printout of the sampler, the swatch sheet, so that you can be following along too. And I'll put a link in the comments on where you can register for the book. And we'll send that off to you right away so that you can get going on the Barn Star Sampler too. We'd love to have you. If you haven't joined the homemade group with Jennifer Tryon yet, please join it because that's where I want you to post all of your progress shots, and you can post any questions you have in there. We'll be making a special section just for the Barn Star Sampler. So please feel free to use that group. It's a lovely space. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this little introductory box opening. Get us started on the 2024 Barn Star Block of the Month Club. We're so happy to be here. All right, stay tuned for the Block 1 class. See you in a little while.